The motivation for this project was to test gaze tracking mechanics in a video game and their effect on game experience. However, we did not want to utilize gaze tracking as a replacement for mouse and keyboard input only. Instead, we wanted an alternative input modality for interaction within the game. We found that only a limited body of research had been looking into using social gaze. Social gaze is based on the gaze interactions shared between people. In this project, it was simulated as a game mechanic for gaze interactions between a player and an NPC. With this in mind, our goal became to develop a first-person single-player video game that implemented social gaze mechanics between the player and an NPC. Furthermore, we wanted to anthropomorphize an NPC through an object rather than a human or animal-like avatar. We decided on a living house. Based on this, a mild horror theme was chosen. This was because of the idea of a haunted house being alive and resentful matched our use of gaze tracking between an anthropomorphized object-based NPC and a human player. The game was implemented using Unity 3D. Taking inspiration from existing stories like Shirley Jackson's book The Haunting of Hill House and Kitty Horishaw's game Anatomy, we started the design with a narrative theme of neglect. For art direction, we decided on a low polygon style with desaturated colors for a darker aesthetic. For the social gaze implementation, 3 different puzzles utilizing different types of social gaze mechanics were implemented as the formal game elements. These were consequently implemented as free rooms in the level design. The house's behavior was modeled to simulate fixations, saccades, and smooth pursuits, utilizing the lamps inside the house as eyes. The Tobii eye tracking SDK was used to have the house's behavior be dependent on the player's gaze. During development, we utilized an iterative playtesting approach. This helped us improve sections and mechanics of the game and reduce unintentional ambiguity in our design. From the feedback we received, we built a simple hint system, adapted the narrative and sound design, and finally increased the intelligibility of our game mechanics. We evaluated 2 versions of our game. The first version utilized gaze tracking to implement social gaze mechanics with the intention of enhancing our puzzles, whereas the second version did not utilize any gaze tracking at all. The players that played the gaze-enabled version also expressed a deeper connection with the house and a better understanding of the narrative, whereas those that played the version without gaze interactions did not seem to understand the narrative as well and felt that the game was too easy and boring. From our project, we found that implementing social gaze interactions as game mechanics can seemingly increase the player's immersion within the game and their engagement in the story. However, the implementation needs to be tested carefully, as the gaze-enabled version also increased the player's frustration due to unfamiliar interactions. Our results showed a clear correlation between the amount of immersion that players felt and their perceived anthropomorphism. For future works, this could be explored more in depth with a simpler gameplay loop, such that the effects of different conditions on perceived anthropomorphism could be further investigated.